Hey, I figured I'd make another video response. I picked B, which is the scenario where the school district is considering adopting um, social learning theory and/or developmental learning theory. Um, and so, yeah, I figured I would, as I uh, plan to respond to the principal explaining strengths and weaknesses, pros and cons of both of them. Yeah, that I would just do a video explaining those. So yeah, as I would prepare for that kind of phone call with the principal, I would for sure uh, plan and prepare to share pros and cons of both theories, explain what they are, explain how to effectively and efficiently use them in a classroom, um, and yeah, like what modeling is, what concrete ideas are, and abstract ideas are, and thinking is. So I would prepare to explain those things. Yeah, and so just get right into it. Yeah, during the phone call, I'd explain that there are pros and cons to both developmental learning theory (DLT) and social learning theory (SLT). Pros of DLT, using that lens and that strategy, is that teachers can generally know how students and their children would learn best at their current age, and how then to like appropriately challenge them and support them. You could do a science experiment where you mix the baking soda and vinegar, classic experiment, and if you do that experiment, it'd be most effective like in about first grade. So if you had a first grade classroom, you could do this experiment. And children at this age are in the stage called pre-operational in PAJ stages. These students are learning like how effectively and use their language in a more sophisticated way. Their memory is getting developed. Yeah, and especially they're learning cause and effect. And so they can understand, okay, if this happens, then this is going to happen. And they can predict that. They can understand and plan for and predict the future. And they're beginning to be able to do that. And so you could do this experiment because this would be right up their alley. You do something and something happens, right? You mix the vinegar and baking soda and we know what happens. It has a reaction and it bubbles up, and so it has a cause and effect reaction. And so students would be very engaged in that because that's the stage of life that they're in. That's how they're generally learning, and so that would stick with them and be memorable. Cons of PJ's stages and DLT is that you're kind of lumping all of the students that you have into one category, which is a very wide and broad category. Generally, the pre-operational stage that we just explained is from ages 2 to 7, and obviously 2-year-olds are nowhere near where 7-year-olds are, and they learn entirely differently. And so DLT kind of lumps them all together though, and so that makes it hard because reality can be different, because some students could be farther ahead than others and some could be way behind. And so this experiment for some students could be, wow, this is really boring, I've already seen this, like, can we do something harder and more interesting? And for some students it could be, I don't have no idea what's going on, I'm so confused, like I don't understand this. And then you would have students who would be perfectly on track with where you'd want. So reality would be a little different than just lumping all your students into one stage. So that would be kind of a con of DLT. But that brings in efficiently the pros of SLT, because SLT kind of meets students where they're at, finds the appropriate challenge and support for them, because it uses the idea of the zone of proximal development, which is that students, here's a student, right? And now they have a certain amount of knowledge, and now you need to figure out how you can challenge them to learn, but also support them enough that they're not going to give up or be discouraged or not be able to reach the goal. And so it's finding that sweet spot, that zone, of how you can appropriately challenge your students and also support them so that they can learn. And typically, two of the best ways to do that is having a more knowledgeable other present and teaching, and also through modeling. And so your more knowledgeable others are obviously a teacher or a parent, right? And so you have a student, and they could be working with the teacher. That'd be a more knowledgeable other teaching somebody. I'm not able to learn from my classmate on how to do calculus because they don't know it either. But my teacher, he's a more knowledgeable other in this situation, and he can teach me how to do calculus. And so then I can learn from him. But also I tutor math, and I am able to teach people my age who are in my class because I have learned these ideas, I have learned these topics, and so then I can teach them. I'm a more knowledgeable other in the area of math, so then I'm able to teach these classmates or these friends or whoever how to do it. And so I would be the more knowledgeable other in that situation. And so you can even pair up students with students because some students might already know the topic, pair them up. But yeah, you'd have to know who is a more knowledgeable other in the situation. And the other way is modeling. Using my teacher again for calculus, he's modeling to me how to do the calculus problem, and then he says, okay, now you do it, and then I do it. And so he does it himself, and I watch him and I see him do it. Same thing. It goes for really nearly every subject of learning. I say music. My teacher can model for me how to write music or how to play an instrument or how to do this certain piece or the certain phrase in music and show me how to do it, and then say, okay, now you do it. I've shown you how to do it, now you do it. And so they're the more knowledgeable other, and they're modeling for me and just supporting me and helping, challenging me to learn and do more. Cons of social learning theory is that some students might have like a barrier between themselves and the teacher or themselves and another student. And so that barrier could be language, culture. And so that would make it hard to learn from others if you have that barrier, which is the benefit to, maybe there's a barrier between the student and teacher language-wise, but another student doesn't have that language barrier. So pair them up together, and then they're able to help each other learn the material, learn the concept. So kind of works itself there. And another con is that some students might not really like the social part of the learning. They might be more of a lone wolf learner of sorts, and might prefer to learn alone. And so when you pair them up with students or you work with them individually, they're not learning because they're more focused on the fact that they have to even work with somebody at all, and they would prefer to just do it alone. And so they're more focused on their comfort and happiness than they are on actually learning the topic at hand. And so that is something to consider as you are working with students. There is also this idea of the visual representation chart. The good news is that this chart, the VRC, we can just call it, can be used in both theories, both DLT and SLT, because in both you will need this. The VRC is an abstract way to describe concrete actions. And so the chart is a continuum of more abstract ideas to more concrete ideas to more abstract ideas. And the goal is that teachers are aware of this and can use this to engage students, keep them mentally engaged, keep them focused and learning. And so you can start off by teaching the concept in a very concrete way, like hands-on, you're moving math blocks around to learn addition. Hands-on, you do a science experiment. Hands-on, you're actually playing an instrument. And then you can go more abstract, and you could work through some pictures and video content about the topic, a video about this period of time in history, or pictures of what cells look like for biology, or whatever you would like and whatever would be helpful, and go through something. And it's more abstract because it's not hands-on. You're not touching anything necessarily, but it's still more concrete than abstract because you have a visual and you have audio. If you went all the way more to the most abstract way to learn, it would be like using a textbook or a lecture to learn and teach something. And so, you could start off with, a very hands-on way, and then switch to, okay, now we're going to learn from this book. It has some good content, it has good things to say, so let's learn from it. And then we can go back more concrete and watch some videos. And then you just kind of you just shuffle around and move around on the chart, depending on where your students are, what they need to learn, what's the most effective way to teach the concept. And so it's helpful for teachers because you can meet students where they are. For some students, it might click right away on a hands-on learning activity. For some students, it might click better for a textbook learning scenario. And, because students will learn differently. Everyone's mind works differently. Everyone's developed differently. And so then you need to be able to use this chart, this continuum of ideas to be able to teach concepts. And so there's pros and cons to both sides, and there are many, many different ways to keep your students actively engaged, mentally engaged, to challenge them and to support them. And one of the simplest ways is to kind of follow that visual representation chart, starting with concrete, and move your way back and forth around and shuffle around on there. And so that would be kind of a succinct way to sum up those theories and their benefits, advantages, and disadvantages. Hopefully then the principal and the school board can decide what is the best and most effective and efficient way to teach your students. Thanks.